Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I suppose, in some ways, part two of the preview for your last module. This is where I'm just going to introduce you to the water knife and tell you some things to look for. Remember, the water knife is going to be a major part of the final exam. About half of your points will come from commentary on the water knife. And so we might as well know it. And your last D12 post is just going to give you some practice reading for sustainability in the water knife. In the last video, the one you hopefully just watched, you saw this document, right? And I went through the whole thing. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to say, okay, all of these can apply to the water knife in some way, but this is for general sustainability in literature or in the world. Let's draw it down and I'll tell you some things to look for in the water knife. Things that will pay off as reading strategies that you can use to answer questions on your exam and for your D12 discussion post. So let's talk about the water knife. Fun book. I saved it for last because it's got a lot of energy. It's got a lot of zip to it. The style is fun. It's fast and furious, right? What genre is it? Some people would call it sci-fi, and it is, and that it takes place in the future, but there's no aliens or anything in it. It's actually from a genre that's become known as cli-fi, and cli-fi is simply climate fiction. Right. And so this one takes place in the not so distant future. We're never really told when, but we can imagine it 40 years from now or 60 years from now, or who knows, maybe 20 years from now, but hopefully not. It is a bit dystopian, right? Remember, there's the utopian and the dystopian. We're definitely in a dystopia, right? But one that looks very, very American. So the setting is the southwestern U.S., basically Arizona, Nevada, California, and Texas. Texas has fallen. There's a lot of refugees in the book coming from Texas over to Arizona looking for a better life. But Arizona is also on the losing end of what has become known as the water wars. And Nevada and California are the states that are willing to do whatever it takes to get the water that's left running from, say, the Colorado River and the underground water supplies and all of these the reservoirs, right? And so Texas has lost pretty much. Arizona is losing, and a lot of the book takes place in Phoenix, which is having major difficulties with water, but also all of the crime and social problems that would happen if you didn't have water for a huge city, right? And Nevada and California are winning, and they are doing whatever they can to win. And that's what a water knife is. A water knife is essentially sort of someone who's like a military operative that is an enforcer that is meant to go and take water from certain locations, sometimes against other states' will. So the setting is that the United States, especially in the Southwest, running low on water. You'll learn that they've covered all of the rivers with sort of like a black plastic tubing to stop evaporation, and they're cutting off water to entire towns because there's not enough for that town and the next town. So they're choosing winners and losers, and so these towns are becoming ghost towns as their water gets shut off or simply stolen by other states or towns farther upriver or something like this. The federal government seems to be very, very inept or unwilling to control the situation. You're going to find out a little bit later in the book that there are politicians involved, but oftentimes they have money involved in certain water companies, and so those politicians protect those water companies and their own financial profits more than they protect people of the state or uphold regulations and governance. So the government is failing here, and in fairly predictable ways, for money and power, just as our real life readings from, say, Jared Diamond on Collapse pointed out, right? So the federal government seems to be inept, unwilling to control the situation. And the southwestern states seem to have taken charge of themselves and are engaged in sort of a state-on-state water war, even though it's not open warfare. They are stealing from each other. They're sometimes using legal tactics. We're going to meet a lawyer right in the beginning. And there's a lot of really easy legal talk about people who are using legal strategies. And when the legal strategies don't work, they send in some of our main characters, the water knives, to go in and sort of be a bully and physically get this water somehow, right? Or to shut down a water station somehow. When legal tricks don't work, then sort of these state militias take over. You can sort of think of them like Green Berets or Navy SEALs of water to some extent, right? And so that's what's going on here. That's the setting. Here's a few main characters that you'll meet over and over. Angel is probably the main character in the book. I think we could easily say he's a water knife, essentially that military operative or militia operative hired by a state enforcer to intimidate people to get their water. But here's the interesting thing about him. He's definitely got a dark side. He's a really tough character and gets things done. But he's also a thinker. You know, you could say he's sort of this dark, brooding, physical guy that sort of has a heart of gold, maybe buried in there somewhere, but he doesn't use it much. But he's also philosophical and is really good at figuring out what makes people tick, right? At what their motivations are. So you might want to track changes in his character, and that's going to tell you a lot about what the book has to say, big picture, about sustainability and what it means to be human in this type of environment, right? We're going to meet Lucy, a journalist who covers the atrocities of the water wars in the Southwest. She's mainly in Phoenix. She can't seem to leave. Is it because of the spectacles of the water war? There are, you know, piles of dead bodies being discovered underground from the water wars and all these things, and she's covering it all. And it's made her famous, but it's also called, I believe, water porn, in that it's not sexual pornography, but all pictures of all the horrible things that are happening there, and she makes a living off of this. So she's not sure if she's a real journalist or simply sort of making her living off of the really graphicness and the worst impulses of people to see the atrocities of war. And so you can look at that. Here's the interesting thing: she represents sort of a social justice angle in that she likes to capture how people are being left out in these water wars. So there's a social justice angle. It's not just about a shortage of water, but about who's winning and who's losing, who has power and who doesn't, who gets water and who doesn't, and why. And so that's that social justice angle of sustainability that we've been talking about in all of Module 2, right? So the book incorporates, interestingly, some social media commentary through her. She's a blogger, and you'll see her blog posts and her hashtags and things like this. And so you can see some commentary in the book on how we talk about the environment and water wars and water as a human right, and whether or not media just sensationalizes things and doesn't care, or whether or not journalism can change the world, right? Whether or not citizen journalism can maybe change the world, or if it's just interested in showing graphic pictures and it's all just entertainment, right? So we're going to see some of that pop culture stuff that we learned back in Module 2.1 pop up through what Lucy does. There's also Maria. She's a young Texas refugee. Her story is basically the story of many average people, and you can think of her as sort of an every man, so to speak, and every human. So you can learn about the daily lives. How does she survive? How do people survive? What are the social and economic systems like on the streets, right? So what counts as tradable? There's these sort of mini economies that pop up where everybody trades in water, and that's what's important. So how do you survive, and how are new systems being built? New cultural systems, social systems, systems that maybe have their own new forms of equality. For these people that have been left out and don't have much water and are fighting just to stay alive. The culture has adapted to this new eco setting, right? And so we want to kind of capture what that is. And that's what Maria represents. You might notice that these are all, to great extent, our religious names. Angel, of course, very significant. Is he the angel of death, or is he a good angel, right? Maria is of course, we could think of Mother Mary, right, or Mary Magdalene, right? So there's this here too. She represents the mother in some way, right? And therefore spirituality, or maybe almost an Eve figure, we would call her. And then Lucy can mean light of the West. That's what Lucy means, light, essentially. And so you can see she brings light to things through her journalism. And so we've got some symbolism going on in the names. Lastly, you're going to learn about Catherine Case and other characters, but this is Angel's ruthless boss who destroys city and steals water through any means that she can, and she sends in sort of ruffians like Angel to do this work. So, what are some of the themes that you're going to see? You're going to see a lot of stuff that we talked about in Module 2, of course. That's why I picked this book, and a lot of things from this list that I went through in the last video. Here are some that you can definitely look for, and they would be good things to focus your reading on for, say, your final exam and your D2L posts. You're going to see a ton of short-term interests overriding long-term interests. That can be in the political leaders. That could be in everyday people themselves, the people who don't have water, and that they're not really interested in building an equal society, but rather there's just new forms of inequality as people struggle to survive. But you also see a lot of commentary in this over the chapters from political leaders and people who should have been looking out for our democratic society, which is not very democratic anymore in this book. So you can definitely look for that and round up examples of that to show that as a pattern leading to the sustainability problems, right? All these short-term interests. Maybe when there was water, short-term interests, as well as when there is no water, once the water wars are on. So that'd be a great pattern to look for in the reading and something that would pay off in your final exam. People who are interested in power. There's a lot of power-hungry characters here, sometimes just for power. It doesn't have to do with getting water. They seem to be relatively safe and they have the money to buy water. Say people like a lawyer that we meet right in the beginning. So people who are just sort of greedy and out for power. That is a problem, we know, and leads to an unjust world and an unsustainable world. So you'll find that in there. Economic inequality and environmental racism. Who lost and who continues to lose in the water wars, and why, and who is having all these problems dumped on them, so to speak, in their backyard. We could look at Texas and then Arizona as the places that are losing and look at why they're losing compared to Nevada and California, who are a bit more cutthroat, so to speak, about getting the water. So we can look at these. The other social injustices that you see in the novel. What were the early forms of inequality that, say, made people from Texas lose? What forms of inequality exist in this novel now, be it between the haves and the have-nots, or maybe just the have-nots, right? There's a lack of interest in human rights. You could look at this and say, what does the novel have to say at its best about water as a human right? Is it saying that when there is no water, these are all the awful things that can happen in a society? Well, the book wholesale then, big picture, is an argument for water as a human right. If we don't protect people's basic human right to water, we could live in an awful society that collapses into militias and state-on-state water wars and stuff like this. So don't forget, this whole book is an argument about the importance of water in our society, and you should always look at it that way too. You can analyze each individual character and what they contribute to these themes, but also the book as a whole and what it seems to be saying about what is the right way to live in the real world and the systems we build. There are other issues related to collapse. You could look back on those and look through our collapse section in here as well. Down through here, you'll find a lot of this stuff going on, maybe some of these misconceptions. Those would be great ways to read this. There's also the ability to afford water. I guess I missed one. The creation of local economies based in water. Again, what do they look like? How do they function? The ability of the wealthy to afford water and a comfortable lifestyle, the haves versus the have-nots. How did this system happen in the first place? The ongoing belief in democracy and justice. Some people still believe, hey, there's the old ways. In chapter 1, you're going to meet Simon Yu, who believes in the old ways, and it doesn't work out for him. And we might want to see, what are the old ways, democracy and justice and a government that is decently fair and protects people? How does that still exist? How does it not? How does this still inform people's ways of thinking about the world? You'll find that there's a lot of people who keep losing in this novel because they still believe the old ways will work, and they're not working anymore. Angel is one of the people that sees these ideas are dead once it comes down to basic human survival in the water wars. But you're going to get a lot of commentary in this book on, if you see the book as an argument again, on how when democracy and justice fail, and the institutions like government don't protect us, or corporations get to overreach for profits, how all of society is undermined, right? This is the dystopian, fictional irreality of all of that. And we'll see where this ongoing belief is, and also where spiritual belief and hope come from as well. So I'll just close here. A few obvious themes in chapter 1 to get you going that you can continue, and you'll see some of these themes continue chapters 2, 3, 4, 5. Chapters 1, 6, 7, and 8, I remember, have a lot going on that you can read into, and I'll let you kind of take it from there. But chapter 1, you might see that people have become greedy and scared right away. They're really, really power hungry. Power seems to come in two forms, the legal and governmental. We're going to meet a lawyer who turns in documents so late that they have won the rights, the water rights, to an area of a state, and the other state can't file sort of the legal counteraction until the next morning. And the one state does that on purpose so that they can then go in and protect their property and steal all of the water. And so that's when you're going to meet one small character in the novel, a minor character, Simon Yu, who still believes in the old ways and still says, wait, you can't do that. Tomorrow we're going to file a legal suit to stall this. But it doesn't matter to Angel. Angel just goes in and takes the water and gets rid of this water source so that his state can get the water, right? So you're going to see a combination of legal and governmental power, but also the lack of it sometimes, and that aggression can be used as well. And that's going to happen here. There's a lot of power struggles and different forms of power. You're also going to get the new ways of the militia, like water knives, and how they contrast with the old ways of believing in government. And you're going to get the government is fairly dysfunctional. It can't control these state-on-state militias, right? So that's kind of what's going on throughout the book, and you'll see some of those themes in chapter one. And once you see those basic events, I suppose, of chapter one, we can think of these as the events too. You'll start to see these themes. So tap into a couple, keep some notes, and this will help you for the exam. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.